So we have the superintendent of Tucson International Academy, the author of the book, Making College Come True, 10 Keys to Success, a former TUSD educator, for those in the background that are TUSD educator fans. There's a lot of them, I heard. And also the newest host, or the newest radio show host in the city of Tucson of the radio show Making College Come True radio show, Dr. That's with the D, Jennifer Herrera.
Woohoo!
Dr. J in the house.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. See, it's
Awesome.
a big up. I'm practicing it. I'm going to get it down. I feel
love
like I'm
it.
your hype man.
You are my hype man. All right, awesome.
Okay, so we have another amazing show for you today. We had a pretty awesome show last week. I think we're getting better and better every week. I'm really excited for what we have today. And we have Don Jacques with Earthseed and Biosphere Jr. here to discuss the work that he's done. I'm actually real excited to have him meet Dr. J, because I'm sure they'll have a lot of meshing, her having classrooms, him working with kids in classrooms. So I'm sure there's some overlap
there's
there.
gonna be overlap.
There must be. And then we also have, I think, safe to say, one of our favorite, if not our favorite guests, and Mr. B in the house.
Mr.
What's
B.
Yeah, and we'll have him the whole second half of the show where he will we'll go back to the well on learning on how we can make college come true for you with the guru on Mike and College Come True. Or I guess, I don't know, if he's the guru, what does that make you, Dr. J?
I'm the guru overseer.
The guru overseer. Yeah, that makes sense. Like she's the Yoda and he's the Obi-Wan.
There you go.
College Come True.
Yeah.
But first, let's thank you, Mr. Don, for coming on the show with us, and we're happy to have you here. Oh, okay. I guess I was incorrect. I guess he'll be calling in a little bit. We will let's go ahead and reverse the order, and we'll speak with Mr. B, since he is right here being cool as always, and you just slick today. After this,
I got some daytime with the wife after work.
All right, because you look like you're going to interview for the new head coaching job for the U of A basketball team.
Arizona.
No, we got some great coaches already. I love our coaches.
Well, definitely a big question I've been having about, that I've wanted to ask an educator with Tucson International Academy is, it seems like it must be special. But what makes being an educator at Tucson International Academy so special?
I think this kind of resonates with every educator out there is you look at a lot of careers and you look at a lot of jobs that are going on around us in the world. And it's pretty amazing when you can look back and say, what I do literally makes a difference. You know, what I do impacts a person's life. What I do impacts their future. What I do impacts my own life. Not only personally, but also with my family. And what I do definitely changes the future. And so if you have time within the crazy day of an educator to look back on that, it resonates with you at every moment. You know, I love my quiet times at night. Just before I go to sleep, I'm laying there with my wife and just kind of looking back on the day and thinking about what it is that I plan to either get over or prepare for the next day, and just kind of let it go. It's pretty awesome. Oh, sorry. Oh, okay, my bad.
Yeah. Well, definitely, I'm not an educator by traditional standards, so I don't know if I can relate. But I mean, I guess, give me your thoughts, Dr. J. I mean, I guess from a kind of, an administrator standpoint and kind of creating Tucson International Academy, what were some of the considerations you had being a former educator and trying to make it as fitting for educators as possible?
Making what aspect fitting for educators,
Just
like our experience?
Just based off of what you experienced at TUSD, how did you what did you want to do to make it different? Make it kind of a little bit more palatable for people.
That's a good question, because people often want to say that charter schools and large district schools are at odds with each other, but not at all. I enjoyed working at Tucson Unified School District. I had 11 years there.
Mm.
And, I was interested in moving into leadership there. And they were asking me, what would I be able to do? And it was interesting. The thing that I saw was there was a program in place, and it was going forward. And it was a good program, but it did have a few holes in it. And the holes that it had were, unfortunately, they seemed to be Hispanics. Like Hispanics were falling through the cracks. And I thought, wow, we have a lot of Hispanics here too. But the ones that keep rising and keep getting all the good stuff and all the awards and all these are not necessarily Hispanic. So I thought, why is that? And I thought, it's not that they don't like Hispanics. I know that because all of our administrators were Hispanic. But there's a culture that underlies each school. And that culture of most of the schools that I was a part of during those 11 years was not very Hispanic oriented. It was more, it was just a cultural shift. And I probably am not able to directly explain that in this 1 minute. But what I can say is that I saw that there was a hole, and I said, what could I do about that? So I started trying things out in my class, like trying to get Hispanic kids excited about what was going on. And actually all the kids. I'm like an all kid person. I'm not like, I'm a little bit blind to differences sometimes when it comes to things. But what I do notice is who's a leader. Leaders always stand out, and it doesn't necessarily matter what background they are or if they're even a boy or a girl. And so I would always take the ones that were a leader. And so I started noticing that the ones that I really saw like natural leadership that needed to be harvested and needed to be cultivated, how could I do it better? And so I started giving them opportunities in the class to practice leadership. Like, all right, you be in charge of passing out all the papers. You be in charge of the lineup, and I want you to give stars to the 3 people who follow our Peace Builder guidelines the best. And so I had these little star givers, and I had all and they became the leaders because they were already the role model, and since they were the role model, they got to go reward others. So I kind of liked that. That was pretty exciting, and boy, did they ever take off with that. I mean, it really started to happen, and then some of my kids that maybe would have fallen through that crack stopped falling through the crack. And so then they would go through the system, and then over the years, you would see them at the grocery store, and I'd say, hey, how you doing? What college did you end up at? Well, first that you must have been their teacher because they're staring at you. And they have this face, especially if they were a kindergarten teacher, because I did teach kindergarten for a while. They have this face like, oh, there's my kindergarten teacher, So I'm like, and I even remembered their names. I don't know how I remembered. I was like, Johnny? And he's like, yeah. Mrs. Herrera, how are you? He was just so cute. And I said, so what did you end up doing? Are you in college right now? Because I was counting up the years. I'm like, yeah, he should be college age by now. And he goes, oh, no, I could never go to college. I'm thinking, what? I tried that leadership thing. I tried doing things. I'm like, why are you not in college? He goes, I'm just not smart. I go, you were on honor roll every semester, every quarter. I couldn't understand it, but I didn't want to do that right in front of his, people there where he's working. So I just was so frustrated with that. I thought, why did that happen? And then right then I had a chance to do charter schools, and I thought, you know what? I have to create a program that's fair to everybody that really harvests the leaders.
And we have Mr. B here in studio with us.
Yeah, Mr. B. Woo-hoo.
Yeah, and Dr. J was filling us in on leadership before we left. I know you got some good questions for Mr. B.
Yeah, Mr. B has been working with Tucson International Academy for over 10 years, 12 or something like that. 11 years. And that's a long time. And when he first came, he was assigned a one-room schoolhouse. He had 6 or 7 grades, and he had one other teacher with him, or his principal at the time. And it was very powerful. It was a rare opportunity for someone to really take advantage of that situation, and he knew what to do. So I was going to say, Mr. B, can you tell us, how did you take one-room schoolhouse, lots of grades, only 2 adults, but 40, 50 kids, and utilize the kids to help run things? I mean, that was such an amazing thing that you did down there. How did you get it like that?
So the first starts with example. You have a vision for what you want your school, your class to be, and then you just run with it. One of the things that TIA, we talk about the separation between a big district school and a place like TIA, like a charter. The biggest thing that I knew right from the get-go, because I actually came from working with Sunnyside School District, is kids get a limited amount to build a relationship with a specific group of people or a specific group of leaders. For example, you take a school that's an elementary school, at best K-5, right? The problem, though, is that you're bouncing teachers that you probably won't see again for quite some time, or if at all, versus a place like TIA where you've got dual grades with one teacher. So now you're building relationships so teachers actually know the student. And then they prep you. Like, okay, you're about to see Mrs. Laos. You know what that means. And district-wide at TIA, everybody knows Mrs. Laos. She's hands down one of the greatest 4th-5th teachers ever on the planet. And what makes her so awesome is her approach as a mom, her approach as an educator, her approach as a leader. And so when we were at TIA, you know, Mrs. Enriquez would remind the kids, just wait till you see Mr. B, just wait. And because she had these kids from 3rd grade through 3rd grade through 6th grade, they had built such a relationship with her. She knew those kids, like not just how to teach them, but she knew everything about these kids and they knew her, right? And so they would cry when they would come to me in 7th grade. Like literally they would cry. And the funny thing is the only thing separating us was a bookshelf from IKEA, right? Like it wasn't like, oh my gosh, you're going to another side of the planet. So this is what I'm talking about when you build a relationship. And so the way that I was able to work with her in terms of planning strategies for the kids coming to the next level, planning strategies for parents, planning strategies. So when you look at the leadership aspect of that, just like Dr. J said, the leaders always stand out. But the other thing to think about is it's not about just the leaders who stand out. How can I pull all these other kids to greatness? You know, not having to prod them. And it's putting them in situations that make them uncomfortable. A great example is one of our shining students who graduated from U of A. This kid did not want to speak. He was by far the most smartest kid in the school. But some of you parents listening probably have a kid like this, smartest kid in school, but doesn't want to speak. And I was constantly putting him in situations where he had to speak. And if he didn't speak up, he would probably face a major consequence with the rest of the class, whether it had to do with something about bullying or it had to do something about why did this happen or why did that happen. And something that I love was the parents' willingness to come in and confront me on it. You know, a lot of times teachers are afraid of conflict, but what they have to realize is conflict is the area in which you can show growth. And so as you teach your kids how to manage conflict, and you as yourself are willing to put yourself into conflict, you start to realize these situations, because out of conflict comes trust. And that was the final foundation of the conversation is, look, I understand what you feel for your son and the fear, but you have to trust me that I know what I'm doing and I will lead your son to greatness. But you as a parent have to trust your educator at some point. And so what ended up happening, we made a decision that this boy would start to show his leadership skills through writing. And there came a point where, okay, let's write it out. And kids started to really see what not only his intelligence in terms of grades, but also how to work with other people. I think what led the catapult was there was so many things across the stage that I did that with every single kid and with every single parent, that when I went into kidney failure, these kids realized, okay, Mr. B's not around, but he always told us life goes on. And so when things happen, how now does this leadership kick into effect? And so these kids, because they practiced it with me for so long, just like in a classroom, you practice your lessons with your kids and then you give them the independent practice. Well, now they took all these things that they had worked on and they ran with it. And this boy ended up being student body president. He ended up running the greatest, like he literally set a standard for all student body, student council presidents for all of our campuses. Like this is it. This is the bar.
Wow.
And so he became a great spokesman. I mean, you would have never guessed when he spoke in front of our entire students who came for college and career day, where we had businesses and universities come to talk to our kids. This kid spoke in front of everybody. You would never thought that this was the most shyest kid in school.
That's right.
It's literally all about building relationships, taking the conflict and not running from it, but actually embracing it to build the trust that you need. And, you know, me doing that constantly with Mrs. Enriquez and doing that with the kids constantly was something, it was just a constant effort. And then as you build that from the classroom to the parents, and then you do that from the parents to the community, you really start to draw people in that say, wow, you guys are really making a difference. And the beautiful part about it, where it's not about me, it's not about Dr. J, it's not even about principals like Mrs. Enriquez or Mr. Montemayor or Mr. Meehan. It's about the kids, where the kids go out there and they sell your program because they're the ones who are talking about how awesome it is.
And that student in particular is Victor Figueroa. And he has a video that he talks about his experience at TIA as a U of A graduate. So I recommend, if anyone listening out there would like to see proof of what we're just talking about, leadership in action, a successful student, a successful adult now, look it up. It's on our website, TucsonInternationalAcademy.com. It's a video. It's I think it even says Victor Figueroa on it. So look it up and see what he has to say about TIA and his experience. He's an amazing person.
Right.
Nice.
And the funny thing about it, and maybe this is just me, or maybe this is some of you who are listening, is, yeah, but that's one kid. No, we have such a long list of kids who've come from our different campuses, and I'm putting Midvale out there because, I spent most of my time there, of just leaders, like literally leaders. And now at East Campus, where kids were grown as leaders, there's some leaders that shine so much that other kids just want to be a part of what they do. But then those kids graduate. And then what? And now those kids have to take all the things that we're working with, and now they become leaders. I got an email this morning from one of the new leaders at the East Campus who said, okay, look, I took care of this for you, and I did this, and I did this, and I did this, and I pulled in a couple other kids to help me lead and do this and do this and do this. And I told them, you would show them a little bit of love. So I'm just letting you know what I did, right? So I was like almost in tears, like, hey, man, you did such a great, awesome job pulling these kids to greatness. You did such a great job delegating. You did such a great job taking care of things while I was away. And you know what? I appreciate you having the intellect to show those kids that you want to award them for the work that they did for helping you out. Great leaders take care of their teams. And so thank you for letting me know so I can back you up in your integrity and what you have to say to make sure that you shine as well as a leader.
That's awesome.
And so that's, it's that kind of communication that just works, and kids, it gives them the opportunity to try, take a risk, and then shine in that risk.
We have a man that we introduced a little bit too early, but we will reintroduce him. And his name is Don Jacques, and he is the founder and director of Earthseed and the upcoming project Biosphere Junior. Thank you for being on with us, Don.
I like it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So explain to us, what is Earthseed?
Earthseed has a broad goal to provide the habitat facilities for pioneers and settlers going to the moon and Mars and beyond. More recently, we're working to develop sustainable living techniques and devices for use here on Earth as a test bed to go out to space.
Wow, that is wild.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
And let
that's
me
cool.
also make a correction. Your last name is Jacques. I definitely butchered it, which is my thing. So I apologize.
Hey, that's all right. It happens all the time.
Wow, that's pretty amazing, though. I mean, what you're talking about, total futuristic things, and that you're on the cutting edge of helping that come to pass. I mean, tell us more about that. How is that potentially going to be utilized, and what kind of people are you going to be looking for that are going to be able to help on this process?
It's really been an interesting journey. Several years ago, we started by learning what aquaponics was and why it makes a good foundation for sustainable living. Once we got a handle on what aquaponics was, we built a tiny home and started touring around the valley and showing people, introducing people to what it was we were doing. We recently retired the tiny home when we acquired a large school bus and began transitioning all of our tools and techniques into what we call the bus. And the bus is our prototype working model of a habitat, for one, that could be placed anywhere. As a side story, one of the inspirations for the bus was the SpaceX website, where they talk about the Falcon 9 and show the fairing. Way down in the corner is a picture of the fairing, and you'll never guess what just happens to be inside that fairing, but an old school bus stuck up on its end.
Huh.
That's
That's
super
wild.
cool.
Now, so forward, our next phase is beginning to set up a facility where people can come and tour a full-size habitat capable of supporting 7 people.
Wow.
So
That's
tell us,
awesome.
what inspired this for you?
Say that again?
What inspired you to do this?
You can call it being inspired, I suppose. I've been part of several advocacy groups, Mars Society, Space Society, Moon Society, for many years. And bunch of old guys sitting around thinking about, what can we do to help the space industry? But the advocacy groups are advocating politically for change in the government and through NASA to be able to push goals for space settlement and space exploration. The downside is that most of us down on the ground here are retired. Many of them are actually former aerospace workers, so they're familiar with the industry, but they've done their work. They've contributed what they wanted to contribute. Nowadays, most of them are perfectly comfortable sitting by the wayside and contributing to the advocacy organizations. I am much younger. I don't come from the space establishment, and I come from a doer mentality, and I wanted to be able to prove or show how people could not only live sustainably, but how could we transition living sustainably with biological components to living on the moon and Mars without having to depend on a huge, expensive technological supply line. And
Yeah.
so I struck out on my own one day and says, hey, I'm going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Little did I
awesome.
know. I had no idea what I was in store for.
I have a question for you. So
Go ahead.
you're speaking with people who come from education, right? And so when we think about college and career readiness, especially for like high school kids who are looking for something different to do that will drive them in the same type of inspiration that you have, what are those seeds that science teachers and social studies teachers can plant in our students' minds at the high school or even the junior high level to encourage kids to look into this more?
Oh, that's an easy one. I had 2 great teachers when I was young. One was a civics instructor, and the other one was a chemistry teacher. Now, Mrs. Boulay, my chemistry teacher, fired my imagination one day by showing us a chart that showed the electrical potentials between different elements.
Mm.
Now, what she did is she made it personal. She challenged me to, in a project for class, to build a battery. Now, at the time, I was a junior in high school, and while we couldn't get access to many of the expensive materials to build a new battery, I was able to discover through the project and make it my own how to actually, what are the components of a battery, what goes into it, what has to work in order to get energy out of it, and so forth. And for teachers, the thing of it is to make it personal. I can't count the number of times I hear kids say, particularly in math class, what am I going to use this for?
All the time.
And my favorite example is that as a handyman, I am constantly challenged with making measurements and calculating things in order to hang a picture, hang a shelf. And for most of us who live in homes that have pictures and so forth, if it isn't hung level, it drives us nuts. To get something to hang level where you have 2 hanging points, you have to figure out the geometry of the 2 points relative to the ceiling, the wall, the floor. You've got to make measures. You've got to do calculations.
Definitely the big thing that I wanted to get to and make sure that we touch on before we go out of this segment is I know you do an activity with kids. I'm not sure whether it's in classrooms or outside, but describe that activity to us and kind of like paint a mental picture for us if you don't mind, Don.
What we're working on now, we've been pretty much, a lot of our stuff's been put on hold with schools being closed and so forth. But what we're working on now is a product that is it's an earth science laboratory. It's an aquaponics setup designed for classrooms where the students can actually grow fish and using the water from the fish, grow plants right in the classroom. They can do experiments, testing the water, learning the scientific methods. They can practice observations, make hypotheses. They can learn about the husbandry aspects of the fish, as well as the planting of the plants, the nitrogen cycle that the kids can work with on a regular day-to-day process in their class. We have an activity booklet that actually goes with it, with some pre-set up experiments that can be used. And in addition, there's other modules that we're also working on to add to the lab to produce oxygen, things that can compost materials from the garden itself. So it's developing into a rather robust little package for the classroom.
And I definitely, and you describing it to me, is especially cool, just the visual I had in my head of like, you know, I know in my growing up in school, the teacher had a hamster and sometimes they had a turtle, and they had like these little activities that you can kind of participate with, but nothing as intricate as this. But it seemed like, at least the way you described it, kind of has it all there, so that you know every science teacher can kind of have one of these in the corner that their class can participate with every semester of every cohort.
Right.
That's awesome. That's a great plan. Hands-on, real life, has futuristic applications with the moon or wherever else in space we would set something up. Wow, I mean, it doesn't get much more real and valuable than that. And that's what we try to do at Tucson International Academy, is we try to make the learning like have an application, something that makes them buy in and, you know, skin in the game, like something that makes them want to actually apply the concepts and to try to contribute to the data. So I love your project.
Along that line, as we were talking before the break, I was talking about teachers making it personal for the class material, but also students ought to be challenged to make it their own.
Yes.
To take something that they see in class and really ask the question, how can I use this today? If you're talking earth science, if you're talking mathematics, but how can the student take and make that personal in their life?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the whole crux of the so at TA we say, you know, that they need to be aware of what's going on, and to find their passion in life, we say look and see what problems out there need to be solved, and then the one that bothers you the most, go out there and solve it. And the bigger the problem, the more money you're going to make as you solve that problem. And we know sustainability is something that could become a problem, and it's something that preemptively, this is a great choice, and people are concerned and want to be a part of it. What a great project, and what a great program.
Yeah, and you touched on a little bit earlier, but kind of expound on it, if you will. COVID-19, it affected us all in some capacity. Some organizations it knocked flat. How have you adjusted to COVID-19, and how has it affected what Earthseed's trying to do?
Interestingly enough, it actually benefited us. We were moving forward at a breakneck speed. We had a spot lined up in the Science City here in Tucson for our bus to come down and showcase. We had several other activities at some local schools lined up. And when COVID hit and the sequestering orders came down, we were basically shut down from all of that. And it forced us to look at where we were at and evaluate what we had and so forth. In the process, We've had some repairs done to the bus that we hadn't had time to do before. We've had some better planning to do with regards to the upcoming activity units that we're preparing, such as the Earth Science Lab. And additionally, we've been able to do a little bit more research, take advantage of our time at home, do a little more research on our larger project, which is we're rebuilding the toilet.
Cool.
And so,
Very
but
cool.
overall, it was a good thing for us because it forced us to take a step backwards and look at where were we, where did we want to go, and were we on track to get there? Kind of a reevaluation of everything.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, that's a way to do it. So it's also just shows how you roll with what happens. You don't let any little thing blow you out. You continue with the mission because the mission's important. And when something's important, you find a way to continue the process. And it sounds to me like that's what you guys did.
We did, and it was both challenging and frustrating because, with the lack of contact with people that we've been so used to, and to now be shut out of all the events, that was hard on myself and the couple friends that I have that pitch in. But even so, it's like you say, you pick yourself up by the bootstraps and you keep on trucking.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, and another point is Don is actually an Air Force vet. So,
oh, wow, cool.
Yeah, so he has that military ingenuity and discipline and integrity, I think was the word of the day earlier.
Yes, correct. Yeah. And I would ask you this too. So let's say a school like ours, 100% of our students get accepted to college, and so what we would want to know is if they wanted to pursue along a project such as yours or to join your project, what kind of studies in college would be most beneficial? Are there even things relevant to what you're talking about, and what would those be? How might that look for them?
I believe that both ASU and the university there in Tucson do have partnership programs that coordinate with Biosphere for ongoing experimental research there. Additionally, I do know that ASU has the Science and Space Division that actually offers coursework and stuff dealing with both life support systems, dealing with rocketry, space science, as well as the planetary studies at ASU. In addition, when you ask about studies that students would want to look at, one of the things that is an ongoing thing is the challenge between science and technology and nature and biology. So often scientists get so wrapped up in the goals of their particular research project, and it becomes all about the technology, and we forget about the biology that goes into it and how the biology can actually show us ways to reach our goals a little bit quicker or more effectively. One example is in composting garden materials, it's not enough to create a pile in the yard and let it build up heat for the microbes. You need to have worms as well as black soldier fly larvae that actually go in and eat the solids to turn that into castings and so forth, that then accelerates the composting, not only to create the food for the plants that you're going to put on the garden, but also for things like the production of methane and various other things that are commercially viable in these projects.
Man, you're just a wealth of knowledge. I don't think we'll be able to get it all, but
that's
we got about $1.50 left. Why don't you let our listening audience know how they can get a hold of you and how they can kind of plug into the work that you're doing?
Okay. Our website is www.earthseed.space. And my email is theduck@earthseed.space. Those are two ways you can get to us directly, and probably with the fastest response. We have probably 5 or 6 different projects in process at this time, and are always looking for a helping hand or somebody to chew the fat with to work out some details.
Very cool.
That is awesome. What
If I
a
may
great.
request some specific vegetables I always forget to pick up on the way home. It will save me a trip to the grocery store in my classroom. I'm all about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right on.
Yeah, and hopefully one day we'll be able to see you maybe in a TIA classroom
Oh, yes.
teaching them how to do all these different things. I especially am excited. Hopefully maybe even one day at Veteran Rescue Mission we'll have one of these systems that can kind of work all these different parts together. I've certainly wanted it for many years. So thanks,
Yes.
Don, for coming on the show. Thank you for educating us. Hopefully we'll have you on again sometime. You definitely have so much information to share. And
I look forward
yeah,
to it.
thanks.
Yeah.